Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal. And I'm here today with Bruce McCurdy and Kurt Leavins. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hey, David. Hello, Kurt.
Hello, fellas. Fresh off the boat and on to the podcast with you guys.
How
looks
long
like you're on solid ground now, it looks like.
I am now. I've been floating
Okay.
for about 45 minutes, but now my feet are firmly on the ground and I'm ready to talk hockey instead of sailing.
Right on.
Is that your commute then, Kurt, when you go to Vancouver to?
It was today, yes.
Okay. Alrighty, well, it's nice to have occasion to meet like this again because it means the Oilers won another round of the playoffs. And I'd like to point out, I really want to congratulate Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and the rest of the Edmonton Oilers. In winning the divisional title, they got the better of 7 teams to do that. And I'd like to point out, in an age where if you don't win the Stanley Cup, you're called, somehow you're a failure. That in the old 6-team NHL, you won the Stanley Cup if you got the best of 5 teams. So this accomplishment on that level is comparable to winning the Cup in the 6-team league, winning the divisional title. There's now 32 teams. It's extremely, extremely difficult to win the Stanley Cup. And, if Edmonton can pull it off in the McDavid era, that's obviously expected, but it would be a tremendous accomplishment for any team. And I know people here are immensely frustrated, but I say set that frustration aside and just realize how difficult it is and what a great accomplishment it's now been twice to win the divisional title, which again is a comparable achievement to winning the Stanley Cup twice in the 6-team era.
And are the Oilers not the only Canadian team since 2006 to get to the Final Four 3 times?
That's probably correct.
Probably true, yeah.
Yeah, it's Montreal, Winnipeg, none of the other. Ottawa, have they? Vancouver, once, maybe.
Yeah, but certainly twice. Vancouver in 2011.
Yeah, not bad.
I know the Oilers are one of 4 teams to make the conference final twice in the last 3 years. And the other 3 are, in fact, Dallas, New York Rangers, and Florida. All 4 of the teams in this year's what we used to call semifinals have all been in this boat within the last 2 years. Kind of amazing how the series have followed the form charts to this point, with 10 of 12 series favorites winning on the basis of having more points during the season. And the only 2 mild upsets were Colorado over Winnipeg and Edmonton over Vancouver, where the team starting on the road, wound up winning the series. But otherwise, it's been strongly in favor of the favorites.
Indeed. It's kind of exciting in a way to have such a distinguished Final Four.
Such a strong field, eh? Yeah, it's like no easy path from here on. Forgot about that.
Last year was such a great opportunity for the Oilers, with some of the best teams eliminated early on, but not so much this year. They're all hanging in there. So kind of in honor of Kurt and in honor of coherence, I just thought we're going to do a 9 things podcast. 9 things about the coming playoff round. So we'll introduce 3 each, and that's how we'll conduct ourselves tonight. Kurt, what is your first thing about the Edmonton Oilers Dallas Stars Western Conference Final 2024?
My first thing is 110%. 110%. Now, that's kind of a double entendre, if you will, because 1, I think it's fair to say the Oilers are slight underdogs against Dallas in this series. So it stands to reason that it will take 110% effort in order to triumph. But the specific reason why I came up with 110%, that is 25% on the power play and 85% on the PK. I think special teams will be a key deciding factor in this series. And I think it is one of the areas where the Oilers actually have a slight edge over Dallas. And I think if their power play can go at minimum 25% and they can kill 8.5 out of every 10 penalty kills, I think that gives the Oilers an edge in the series. So 110% on the effort side, but also 110% on the execution side. Power play, penalty kill.
Yeah, that came up in our Vancouver thing as well. I cited a number like that, saying if we get 110, I think it was 110% combined, that'll be a difference maker in the series. And you know what? It basically was, in the sense that Edmonton was 30% on the power play and 87% on the penalty kill against Vancouver. Outscored them 6-3. And in all of the situations, Edmonton only outscored Vancouver by 1. And it was, in fact, a power play goal to none against in Game 7. That was the difference in the deciding game. It was very, very large factor. And I agree, absolutely, it will be again against Dallas.
And the 30% is killing off 70% of the power plays and
Oilers converted 30, 6 out of 20.
Okay.
And they killed 87%, 20 out of 23. So Vancouver had 3 more power plays and 3 fewer power play goals.
I always have
For
to
all
think
the
about
complaining about the calls, they had 3 more power plays, just saying.
Yeah, I always have to think about that number. It doesn't ever come to me intuitively what everybody's talking about there. So the Dallas penalty kill has not been fantastic yet. What's it at, Bruce?
69.2%.
Okay, so
that's pretty ugly.
That's not good. But when the Oilers last played them in the regular season, Dallas played the most aggressive penalty kill I had seen all year long, and they totally came after the Oilers and shut down the Oilers power play quite easily. What we saw in the Vancouver series, like LA just totally spit the bit by collapsing into this tight little diamond. You let the Oilers pass it around, they'd love it. Give those guys time and space with the puck, they'd love it. It was the worst strategy. I can't believe the coach got a new contract, Hillier. And honestly, it is such a terrible strategy. You can't figure that out as an NHL coach against the Edmonton Oilers. You don't deserve to be an NHL coach, in my opinion. Might be harsh, but that's how I see it. Vancouver started out the same way. They were very, and I was surprised. I was expecting them to be a bit more aggressive on the PK, but they started out also just very hanging back, not challenging. And then they realized, to hell with that. Like, they're scoring like crazy against us. And they started to come after the Oilers. And I'm actually really glad that happened now that the Oilers have won the series, because now the Oilers are used to that. The last 3 games, I think, the Vancouver Canucks made a concerted effort to go after Evan Bouchard, to go after whoever had the puck on the perimeter. So it's not going to be such a shock to the Oilers system. I mean, I wish all the teams would just hang back and try, and let the Oilers pass it around. Some of the coaches, though, are tactically intelligent. And Peter DeBoer is obviously a fantastic coach. And they are going to come after the Oilers, but the Oilers now at least have a little bit of practice. And I don't quite know the strategy. I think the strategy against such aggressive play is super quick passing, but more than that, super quick attacking the net. You get the puck past that first guy who comes out to get you into the middle of the ice with McDavid, you dump it over to him. He's got to attack hard on the net, then take it hard to the net, either with a shot or a pass quickly. And the Oilers don't like doing that. They like to move it around and make a nice play. But I think against that super aggressive penalty kill, it's like even strength. You get time and space, even strength to go hard to the net, you take it. So I think that's what they're going to have to do on the power play, is a far more kind of a direct approach. Focusing on beating the first man who's coming at you, getting it to someone in the middle of the ice, and having that person either shoot immediately or take it hard to the net. And maybe you'll pass it on the way to the net, and then there'll be the shot. But you're going to the net within 3 seconds, within a second of getting that pass into the middle of the ice. Thoughts?
We got the guys who can make the adjustments, I figure.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Yep.
they got
I
the
think you've arguably got the best power play in the league this year, and historically, awfully damn close too. I think if anybody can adapt to what Dallas can throw at them in the PK, it's Edmonton. So yeah.
Let's go ahead, Bruce. I was going to go to thing number 2. Are you ready? Are we ready for? Do you have another point or?
well, just that the top 4 scorers in the NHL playoffs for points, and the top goal scorer, who is a different player from those 4. Those 5 guys are the Edmonton power play. So far they've demonstrated that they're able to work against whatever the other team throws up against them. Obviously, Dallas will be a new challenge, but I'm reasonably confident, and I mean, they need to. That's their difference maker, and they proved it already twice against LA and against Vancouver, that their special teams dominance was the difference. Large difference against the Kings, smaller difference against the Canucks, and guess what? The series was a lot closer.
Bruce, the second thing, which is your first thing.
Okay. Yeah, I've just been looking at the makeup of the 2 teams. I'm working up a post. I did the same thing before the Vancouver series, and I've done so in the past. I'm endlessly fascinated personally with how rosters get constructed. And I'm more armchair GM than coach. But I'm interested in what the tools are the coach has been given and where they came from and how they went about getting those guys. And the Oilers have the aforementioned 4 leading scorers in the playoffs were all top 10 NHL draft picks by the Oilers sometime in the last decade and a bit. Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 1st overall, Leon Draisaitl, 3rd overall, Connor McDavid, 1st overall, Evan Bouchard, 10th overall. And all of those were hugely productive, high draft picks that have turned into outstanding players, different levels of outstanding. I mean, obviously, McDavid and to a lesser degree, Draisaitl that have the baubles, but all 4 of them are mighty powerful on that power play. And they also have Darnell Nurse from that first round, who's been a cornerstone player for a long time, and Dylan Holloway, the most recent. And Dallas, they also have 6 first-round draft picks in their lineup, but only one of them was a top 10 pick. That was Miro Heiskanen in 2017. He went 3rd overall, and he's covered that bet. But they've absolutely been crushing it in the draft for the last few years, the Stars. That 2017 draft, they got Miro Heiskanen, franchise defenseman, 3rd overall. Jake Ottinger, their number 1 goalie and number 1 goalie for the foreseeable future, at number 26 overall in the first round. Then the second round, at number 39, Jason Robertson, who's a cornerstone forward.
Is that all?
Yeah, like 3 in a row. It's like when the Oilers picked Lowe, Messier, and Anderson in 1979, 3 Hall of Famers with their first ever 3 NHL draft picks. And it's almost that level of just absolutely crushed it with 3 stars in the same draft. That does not happen very often. But since then, they've picked up guys like Thomas Harley in 2018. They picked up Logan Stankoven, who's just breaking into the team now. But they previously had guys, Rupi Hintz, 2nd round pick, Essa Lindell, 3rd round pick, Jamie Benn, 5th round pick. I mean, this goes back a long way, but mostly in the Jim Nill era, the Stars have really been kicking out the jams at the NHL draft, and that's where a lot of their power has come from. And the Oilers in the 2nd round just don't have anywhere near the depth of field as what Dallas has been managing to pull up. They've got Stu Skinner and Ryan McLeod, and arguably Vincent Harney, that was a day 2 draft pick compared to the guys I just mentioned, right? Ben Lindell, Hintz, Robertson, Stankoven, that all came sort of later on in the draft. And both teams have similar numbers of unrestricted free agents, 7 for Dallas, 8 for Edmonton, and of players acquired by trade, 5 for Dallas, 6 for Edmonton. And there's some mighty nice names in there. I mean, Dallas traded for Tyler Seguin way back in 2013. But on the new end of that list, Chris Tanev, that they acquired at the deadline, who apparently has been a hugely important player for Dallas. He's got 1 point in the playoffs, but a big outscorer playing the Tufts. And so they certainly added to the team that way. And they picked up some interesting free agents over the years. The Oilers, I mean, I'm not going to name any more of the players because we know who we're talking about here. And, each team has some victories in trades and some victories in the UFA end of things. The other thing I found kind of interesting was the distribution. And if you break down the players by age, Dallas has way more young guys and way more old guys than the Oilers do. And the Oilers have far more middle of career guys. Like if you look at age 27 to 33, out of 23 players on each roster, 17 for the Oilers are in that sort of mid-career, sort of mature veteran, but not quite ancient category, compared to just 8 on the Stars. And Dallas, on the other hand, have got 9 guys 26 or younger to just 4. And, if youth will win out, well, Dallas is sitting pretty there. And they've also got a few antiques on their roster. They got 6 guys who were born in the 1980s, and the Oilers have 2. So that part's quite interesting. I think actually I'd rather have the more mid-career guys. So I think that's slight advantage, Edmonton.
Well, yeah, like we see with Corey Perry, what can happen to the old guys? And it's an interesting question. What's going on with Joe Pavelski?
Little Joe, yeah.
Yeah, he's not had a good playoff. Well, at least when it comes to putting up points. So what does that mean, if anything? He's now, how old is Joe? I'm just
39.
39, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I know that Ryan Suter got a lot of criticism last year in Dallas. He was a favorite whipping boy on that team. Not so much this year. He's been bumped down the roster since Harley has come over, and now Tanev. He's not being asked to play so many hard minutes, Ryan Suter, and he's
right.
Surprise. He's a lot of pressure's off, and he's not doing so poorly. So
they're mostly running 5D in Dallas.
They are, yeah,
and
5D.
So they got some real minute munchers there, but that can take a toll over a long period of time. Never mind if one of them gets banged up in the process.
So Joe Pavelski in April had 4 points in 7 games in the regular season. So, but that was after 12 points in 13 games in March. If there was anything wrong with Joe Pavelski, it didn't show up until April. Maybe he got injured. Like, I mean, that's the most obvious thing when you see a rather marked decrease in production for a player over a couple months, which we're now seeing with Pavelski. This is now April, May. It's usually injury.
He got 1 goal in the right at the end of the series, against Colorado.
Yeah, he's got Joe Pavelski 1 goal and 4 points in 13 playoff games, and he's playing regularly on the top power play. So
I did notice him out with the 2-1 lead in Game 7 against Vegas in the last 2 minutes of the game, doing the Derek Bryan thing and getting the puck out of his zone and 10 feet from the icing line without actually icing it. And you could see those beautiful hands of his doing the good work in a different job than we think of him, tipping pucks home, from the slot. But, there are reasons that the GMs like their veterans, that's for sure.
Yeah, Dallas is considered a model franchise because of the way they draft.
Yeah,
And
they've been crushing it.
good for them. Like, I don't know who's doing it, who the scouts are. It's usually one or two scouts who really crush it, but good for them.
Wyatt Johnson, I mean.
Yeah. I'll go to my good thing, which is the third good thing. And my first, and it's just, I'm going to be third talking point is just the expectations heading into this series. And I have to say that I'm thrilled with how it's playing out in terms of expectations. 80% of the NHL analysts that I could find favored the Stars over the Oilers. So that includes 19 out of 24 at ESPN, 13 out of 14 at the fourth period, 12 out of 15 at NHL.com, and 13 out of 16 at Dobber Hockey.
Wow.
So there's just a strong consensus.
Yeah, that's consistent, isn't it?
And I think that the Athletic had them at 87%, something like that.
Wow.
Now,
Guess we're done for.
there was one analyst, I think, is it Mark Kelly? Works for NHL.com. Just give me a second here. I'll find his name. And he has the Oilers at 54%, and he also uses a model based on advanced stats. And like I heard someone saying that their model, I think at the Athletic, they were saying the model suggested that it's Mike Kelly, that both, according to their model, both Vancouver and LA had more even strength expected goals against than the Oilers expected goals for than the Oilers did.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, maybe in LA, I think we found it to be pretty even, but the Oilers had considerably more grade A shots than Vancouver, according to our work. So I'm not sure if I buy some of the analysis that's going on, statistical analysis and otherwise. But Bruce, Kurt, I absolutely love it. And I love it even more because in Dallas, they are supremely confident. I've spent the last few days listening to a lot of Dallas podcasts. And I'm going to go and I'll focus on one, which is the official podcast of the Dallas Stars. What do they call it? It's got kind of a goofy name. Podman Rush, I think it's called. It's by Daryl Ray, I think he's from Alberta. He's a real
Daryl
character.
Ray.
He is a real character. He used to play for the Oilers. He played a handful of games with the Edmonton Oilers. He is like the Bob Stauffer of the Dallas hockey scene in terms of he's been there since '96. He's been on the radio. He's a total team insider. And he gave, I thought, he was the most confident of the Stars win, and he gave the best summary. And I'm going to read it to you. And so here's Daryl Ray, what he had to say about how they're going to beat the Oilers. Quote, "This could be quick." Could, in quotes, could. They got a team, Edmonton, that went 7. Their success is predicated on a lot of the same things as the Avalanche. It's a rested Stars team, not a Stars team that went 7. They are the best team in the Western Conference. They proved it in the regular season. They're proving it in the playoffs. Their discipline should neuter the Oilers' wicked power play somewhat, I would think. And they don't take a ton of needless penalties. They have better goaltending. I think the Stars' D-core is better with the puck. They have a deeper forward group. They have a more experienced coach. And as he was listing those things, I was kind of thinking, those are already good points. He ended up talking about the party scene at the Ice District and how they were all wildly celebrating at the sold-out watch party at the downtown arena. And he said, they're all frothy up there. Just imagine how disappointed they're all going to be at the end of this. I can't see that Edmonton team beating this team in a series of 7. I just can't. I cannot, and I will not. So that was Daryl Ray. But again, I love this because I think the Oilers are a super confident / overconfident hockey team. And they are at their worst when it's in the bag, when they feel it's in the bag. That's when their bad habits come out. Like when they're up a few goals, that's when you can count on the Oilers to play their worst hockey. When there's no pressure to win, that's when you can count on the Edmonton Oilers to play their worst hockey. They will find ways to lose. When the chips are down, this team does come through. Not always, as we saw against Vegas, but they kind of got behind the 8 ball there. But I do think this team has learned, and it does respond well to pressure. And the more pressure, the better. And the more people that doubt them, the better. So I think 80% of analysts going against the Oilers, I love that. And I'm going to close this with one little stat to keep in mind for everyone who thinks Dallas is going to cakewalk here. After Chris Knobloch took over in mid-November, both teams, Edmonton and Dallas, played 69 games. Edmonton led the league with 97 points. Dallas was third with 94. Edmonton's goal differential was plus 72. Dallas's was plus 55. So this notion that Dallas is a markedly superior team to the Edmonton Oilers, I know why. And we're going to get into why. You know, the Oilers have obviously a few big holes in their roster right now, notably iffiness, shakiness in net. And I think that's why it's tilted so far for the Dallas Stars. But this is a hell of an Oilers team. And I think it's going to go 7 games. And I think it's a coin flip on which team wins.
Well, just in the playoffs, I mean, Edmonton is 8 wins, 4 losses. Dallas is 8 wins, 5 losses. And you could say Dallas had the tougher road, and I wouldn't argue with you. Edmonton is plus 13 in goals. Dallas is plus 7. You know, and by that metric, which is a pretty important one, they were the 4th of the 4 remaining teams. And in part, you know, their penalty kill has struggled a bit, as we already pointed out. But I watched some of their games, man. That is one hell of a good hockey team. And when they get the lead, good luck, because they really got the rhythm down of controlling the puck and the direction of the puck and the style of play. You know, get pucks deep and work it in the other team's zone. You control the puck and let them waste their energy trying to get it off of you. Seemed to be the Dallas approach against both Vegas and Colorado, who, lest we forget, are the last 2 Stanley Cup champions. So they've done,
That's why they're
some
so
would say,
confident.
Gord's work already, getting rid of those 2 teams, but they present something of a challenge in their own right.
Well, you know, David, as you were reading off all of the, you know, prediction statistics and how heavily, you know, perception seems to lean against the Oilers. I think every time someone counts the Oilers out, I think Connor McDavid sets his jaw that much harder.
Yeah.
You know, harken back to the end of the season where he said, you know, everybody counted us out for dead, and look at us now. I think that is one motivated captain. And every time someone says he can't, I think he'll say he can. And so there's some significant bulletin board material there, which in itself doesn't win a playoff series. But if you're saying things that are pumping up the Oilers' best player, you have to wonder whether you know, that glowing one-sided review is really going to help his team or not. Since you compared him to Bob Stauffer, you know, one thing I admire about Bob, he's not afraid to say when the Oilers are deficient, and he's not afraid to give the other team the benefit of the doubt. In fact, he kept doing that for Vancouver all the way through the Vancouver series from early on. I think Bob half believes that. But I think Bob also doesn't want to give the other side any ammunition. And so that Darryl Rowell thing that you just read off, I'd put that on the bulletin board in the Oilers dressing room and say, oh yeah? And so,
Yeah. Well, that was in my story. I said, if you listen to these podcasts, you will find the mother lode of bulletin board material. And I didn't know what to expect in going into these podcasts. And I wasn't looking for bulletin board material. But from the first one I listened to, it just was hitting me over the head how ultra, like, I mean, they just knocked off the previous 2 Stanley Cup champions, but it has gone to their heads, like totally, at least the fans and the commentators, they really believe in this team. Now, maybe it's because this is that good of a team. Maybe this is completely warranted, and this is a threshing machine that's going to chew up the Edmonton Oilers in fairly rapid fashion. That's a distinct possibility. You can't overlook that. So maybe they're right. Like, I don't know, but it just hit me over the head like, wow, there is fanatical belief. And when I listened to the podcast for Vancouver and LA, which I did also, there was a real tendency to favor the home team. Most local markets have that. People are homers, whether they admit it or not. And a lot of the podcasters are fans. They're not professional hockey writers who tend to try to stay in the middle. So there was belief in Vancouver. There was belief in LA. But man, the belief is just through the roof. And I hope, and when I wrote it, I thought this is good bulletin board material for the Oilers. And I hope someone points out that post to them and they just read Daryl. And I won't get into it. Like they did a couple movie analogies, which were all about how total domination.
Let there be blood. Yeah.
Yeah. Total domination of one person over another was the theme of both of these movie analogies. So just, essentially the Oilers being Dallas's hand puppet, their patsies was the gist of it. And, I just based on the regular season, but more than that, based on the last two games, because I think the Oilers finally worked out a ton of really major kinks in the Vancouver series in the last two games with their line combinations and their defense pairing combinations. And most of all, with the thing that I think is the most important thing this Oilers team has to do is cover the defensive slot. Look for the danger man coming in. They were more aware of that in these last two games against the Canucks than I've ever seen them. I saw players constantly shoulder checking and not going to charge off to a battle in the corner. Instead, shoulder checking, looking, and then going to the danger man instead of the person in the corner who's never going to score. They were playing a very smart, very intense, conservative defensive hockey, which I think is important for the Edmonton Oilers. Your third thing, your second thing, Kurt.
My second thing, and you guys alluded to it a couple of minutes ago, is the Dallas defense. And I could fold the Oilers defense into that, but this is primarily an observation and a commentary on the Dallas defense. I think Miro Heiskanen is one of the best three defensemen in the NHL. I think he's fantastic. But Dallas really leans heavily on 4 or 5 guys. And the sixth guy, whether it's Lundqvist or whether it's Petrovich, barely playing. In fact, Lundqvist in game 5, I think, played 228. And while I want to give Heiskanen all the credit in the world, fabulous skater, fabulous defender, but frankly, these guys are not Robinson, Savard, and Lapointe. And here's where I think the Oilers have another potential advantage, because the Oilers also have the best players. They've got McDavid, they've got Draisaitl. I think the longer this series goes, it will be interesting to see if Dallas's 5-man unit can stand up to the pressure of two of the best players on earth. I'm not positive they can. And Ryan Suter, to me, he's a 6 now. The other thing I'll comment on is depth. I think Dallas's top 5 is a very good top 5, but I think their depth falls off substantially after that. I think the Oilers' 6th defenseman is better than Dallas's 6th defenseman.
Alex Petrovic?
Alex Petrovic.
We shouldn't laugh, Bruce.
Or Petrovich, I guess, as he called now.
Got run out of Edmonton.
Yeah, so
I know.
Well,
he was
Dallas
bad here.
Is a really deep team. I think that's fair. I don't think Dallas's defense is as deep as the Oilers' defense is. I think it's top heavy. And, Dallas fans may say, well, the Oilers' forward lines are top heavy. Okay, but I think you can turn the tables on their defense. And I think it'll be one of the deciding factors in how long the series goes and who ultimately wins it.
2 things, Kurt. I think the Oilers should target Miro Heiskanen for hits. Every play, every chance you get, and everybody, including Ryan McLeod and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins and Warren Fogle, and every chance you get to hit Miro Heiskanen, hit him. Every single play, hit him. Evander Kane, target him like you did Quinn Hughes. And the second thing is, their depth is weak. They're playing Alex Petrovic, kind of a career tweener, minor league NHLer as their 6D man. He's taken the place of actually kind of their Vinny DeHarnay, who's injured. This guy, a Finnish player called Hakanpää, and Hakanpää translates into English as hack and paw, because that's how he plays the
I
game.
thought it meant hulking giant, but
So hit Heiskanen, hit him, and hit Tanev. Those are the two guys they're raving about, over the moon about in Dallas. Tanev is an older hockey player. Hit him, hit Heiskanen.
Yeah, well, their ice time tells the tale. Heiskanen's been averaging 28 minutes a game in the playoffs.
28?
Yeah.
Okay, so the overtime.
Harley, Lindell, and Tanev are all around 24. Suter's at 19. Petrovic, who played one game, got 16 minutes in it, whereas Lundqvist played the prior 12 games and averaged 4 minutes and 28 seconds. Like he was Philip Broberg inside of a bubble in terms of how much they used him. So they at least used Petrovic a little bit, but there's some. I'm not sure how many minutes of overtime they played. They played a couple of games, and one went into double overtime. But they're really heavily reliant on those four, and Suter is kind of the number 5 and then that's kind of it.
Indeed. Bruce, let's move on to your second thing, which is our 5th thing. What you got?
Yeah, well, it's just sort of concern / wishes for the health of Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl in particular, especially McDavid, who has, I think, been visibly less than his considerable 100%, which is 125% compared to pretty much anybody else, and that difference making that sets him apart has been reduced by whatever it is that's ailing him. There's been lots of talk about some kind of hand or wrist issue that's preventing him from shooting the puck and maybe giving him some problems handling the puck. And also, I'm just not noticing the explosive burst of him coming in one-on-one on a defender and just flat out beating the guy with wide speed. And I'm not, I wonder if he's sort of carrying 2 or 3 different things, the way he gets hacked and manhandled on an ongoing basis, not to mention cross-checked by 2 guys at the same time after the game is over. He does get the special treatment. He's going to keep getting the special treatment because just as we say, nail Heiskanen, every single Oilers opponent in the playoffs, especially, is saying hit McDavid every chance you get. And
hit Leon too.
And Draisaitl, he, when he got hurt in game 1 against Vancouver and left the game, I don't know what you guys, but I know the sinking feeling that was in my stomach at that moment in terms of Oilers' playoff chances. And I mean, to his credit, he came back and finished that game at way less than 100%. And they lost that game, and it did not look good. And then he seemed to be just, it was back spasms, I guess, and they went away as near as I can tell. But let's go those 2 guys in particular. So go the Edmonton Oilers, and if they want to climb a mountain called the Dallas Stars, they're going to need both of those guys operating at pretty much close to full capacity.
Yeah, I think pretty impossible to argue that point, Bruce. I think you're dead on. A couple other along the same injury front, Roope Hintz isn't expected to start the series for Dallas, and as is typical in playoff time, we actually don't really know if he'll play the series at all, just because everybody's so tight-lipped. But that's a significant loss for them. Certainly not.
I'll say.
But certainly not on the McDavid Draisaitl level. I agree with that. The other thing that will be very interesting to see is not if, but when Adam Henrique draws in for the Oilers. I think Henrique is a 2-way top 6 player and doesn't make the Oilers just a little bit better. I think he makes the Oilers a lot better if he's in the lineup. It doesn't sound like he'll be in game 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in from game 2 on.
Who do you think he should take, Kurt? Take out?
There's a
Because
good
this
one.
lineup was, I finally thought they finally got it right. They finally had the nerve to do what they should have done a few games previous, which was bench Corey Perry, who was struggling to keep up with the pace of the game. And I loved those lines in the last 2 games. I thought they really nailed it. So I don't know. Like, to me, I would take out Carrick and put Henrik there for the first game back and go from there. What would you do?
Well, I think Carrick is a good candidate, even though he played well in game
Yep.
7. I certainly had no issue with his performance. Who hasn't played well is Ryan McLeod, but I'm not sure that you want to lose the speed of McLeod to the boots of Henrique. At the end of the day, great question. I just know Henrique is one of your 6 best forwards, and so
I guess Fogle. You could take out Fogle. But he's killing penalties like
Brown
a demon.
could come out like he did before. There's a few options.
Yeah.
Henrik is probably better than those options.
Yeah,
and would be an upgrade. But
Fogle had a pretty good game 7, but on balance, he's been underwhelming, right? I think Connor Brown probably has outperformed expectations in the playoffs to date. So yeah, there's a few candidates, and I wouldn't hesitate as soon as Adam Henrique is proclaimed ready, he'd be on my lineup card.
I want him really ready this time, because last time he cost him a goal on the PK because he was not agile. So be ready, like super ready to go. And because right now there's no need for a change. That quickly changes after you lose a game or two, though, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Yeah.
Yep. I think you can make an easy case to stick with your same lineup for game 1. But as a famous person once said, a plan is all good and fine until you get punched in the face. So,
I think it was Mike Tyson who said that.
I think so, yeah.
Is he fighting someone coming up? Oh, Jake Paul, I think. I'm just paying. All right. I guess I'm up. And my next thing is to talk about is the Bouchard-Ekholm pairing. And I was digging into some numbers around Darnell Nurse today. And it just struck me how incredible this performance was, especially against Vancouver. Ekholm actually struggled a bit defensively against Los Angeles. There wasn't a lot of shots that ended up in the net, but his rate of making mistakes was really high on grade A shots at even strength against LA. But both he and Bouchard it was surreal almost how well those two guys played. And I know there was mistakes on both of them. Ekholm changing off too early on a goal, the winning goal against in game 5. Bouchard coughing up the puck for a goal against in game 5 or 6. I can't recall exactly. So there was some, they weren't perfect, no players, but man, what a performance. And so I was digging into some numbers around Darnell Nurse. Ray Ferraro was giving Nurse a great mark, saying he played excellently against Vancouver. And what I saw of Nurse is he played better as the series went along. By the end, he was playing good hockey. But there was 3 defensemen who were outstanding: Kulak, and then above Kulak, Bouchard, and Ekholm. So I just went through even strength minutes played against JT Miller, because Ferraro was suggesting that you might have to, that Desharnais and Nurse were playing against tough competition against Vancouver, and you might have to, Dallas is a more balanced team. They're not a one-line team like Vancouver. So you might have to break up Desharnais and Nurse. And I was thinking, does that make sense? Like, does that stack up against the numbers? It's because it didn't pass the smell test to me in terms of quality of competition. So I just looked at the ice time against JT Miller, because he was the one guy in Vancouver that we all feared. He was the powerhouse player. He was on the best line by far. And it turns out that it was Bouchard and Ekholm who played the most minutes by far against JT Miller. So not only were they getting it done, just moving the puck, passing the puck, defending well, having great performance, great results, they were doing it against JT Miller's line, which is all the more remarkable. So in terms of percentage of your even strength ice time against JT Miller's line, Ekholm was at 47% of his minutes were against, and so for tough competition, That's a really high number. Bouchard was at 44% of his even strength minutes. Nurse was at 26%, Nurse and Desharnais at 20, Nurse 26, Desharnais 27, and then Kulak and Ceci 21% each. So there's just a marked drop off in usage when it comes to how Ekholm and Bouchard are used. They're just used in all situations. Pretty much all. Bouchard's still not used on the PK, but they are trusted now towards the end of the game. Bouchard's getting trusted then. His play with the puck and his defensive play, I have been bullish on Evan Bouchard forever. But if I'm honest, did I ever see him reaching this level? Man, I hoped and I thought it was possible. But the level that he just reached of point scoring, the first NHL defenseman in NHL history to score 20 points in the first 2 rounds, the defensive acumen that we've seen, the puck moving, the clutch goals, the cool under fire, that's more than, he's exceeded my expectations, which were really, really high. He's playing right now like a Conn Smythe Trophy candidate. And I would argue he might be the Oilers. Personally, I think he's the Oilers MVP in the first 2 rounds. He'd get my vote.
In a comment on your observations on the Ekholm-Bouchard pair vis-a-vis JT Miller, I agree with your observation, and they were excellent. But I think there's a factor in that 5-on-5, quite often it was Fab 5, right? And Bouchard and Ekholm was playing with the McDavid line. And I would argue that one of the reasons JT Miller wasn't quite as effective offensively is because he had to be focused on defense every time that McDavid was on the ice. And I think that in turn helped out the performance in Ekholm and Bouchard. I don't mean to take anything away from them or from your comment. I agree with it. But I think the fact that JT Miller had something else on his mind when he was on the ice sure didn't hurt.
Useful. That's excellent context, Kurt, and I completely agree with that.
I was going to make a similar point that Miller was tasked with checking McDavid, and because they deployed the quintet as a unit continuously, that when you get the McDavid assignment, you also get for a bonus to go up against Bouchard and Ekholm. So that might explain some of the disparity in the minutes. Was that some of it was of the Vancouver coaches, Rick Tockett's choosing to put Miller against those guys, and you could really dig into the home road splits and that sort of thing. But it seems to me in the home games for Vancouver, Miller played more against McDavid.
He did.
And in the Edmonton games, meanwhile, Bouchard and Ekholm are benefiting from playing with McDavid and his fantastic line mates almost continuously. So for all that you can talk about their quality of competition, their quality of teammate is through the roof.
Yeah, and the final bit of context is this was a best on best competition, and the line of Besser, Miller, P.S. Suter, and Quinn Hughes and I guess Hronik. I don't actually know who the defensemen were that were most often used against that group, but Vancouver has I think it might have been Susie. Excuse me, it was Susie and what did you call him, Bruce? The crazed giraffe.
Oh, the chaos giraffe.
The chaos giraffe.
Tyler Myers. Yeah. That's a nice compliment.
It is such a nice thing to say about it.
Well, a chaos defenseman, to be fair, that's a style of player. And it's not, chaos isn't all bad. It's a guy that disrupts and breaks up cycles and stuff. A cycle breaker is kind of a chaos defenseman. And
not a compliment.
Sheldon Surrey was a classic chaos defender, right? Where he could just shut stuff down, and and that can be a really good thing. It's just you don't really know what he's going to do next. Is kind of the underlying principle.
You will never convince me, Bruce, that is a compliment. Sorry.
Well, it's a description more than a compliment. It's not an insult. It's just
a
description.
I think Maxwell Smart and Agent 99 have a different definition of chaos.
Different
He's
spelling
like a
too.
6'7" Dennis Grebishkov, Bruce. 95% good and 5% secret agent for the other team. The old Tom Barrett line. All right, moving on. Kurt, your last thing. We're on thing number 7.
7 and 9.
Goaltending. Goaltending. I think if the Oilers get anything a fraction less than average goaltending, they're pooched. They're done. Because Dallas has the best goaltending in this series. Period. Full stop. If Stuart Skinner plays anything remotely less than average, I don't think they got a hope. This might be over in 5. I think the goaltending matchup is decidedly tilted in Dallas's favor. I think this series, if we see the backup again, it'll be for all the wrong reasons again, and there's no guarantee it will go as well as it did in the Vancouver series. Having said all that, I hope that Stuart Skinner proves me absolutely and emphatically wrong. I can tell you practically every game that Skinner played in the playoffs, my lovely wife who sits beside me and the coach, every time he strays out of the crease, she shouts, "Get him the net!" And exactly, if you've never met her, is about 4'10". But she's telling Skinner, man, how to tend the net. So
that's what I yell when Cece and Nurse rush the puck. I say, "Get back in position." Every single time, get your butt back in your position and stay there. Anyway,
I've come to mostly trust Skinner's puck handling. He's not flashy, but he's pretty consistent. And I can't think of too many times where he caused like a goal against because he coughed the puck up. There was that one when he broke a stick last year against LA Kings that kind of hurt in the moment. The one that he's got this new tick where he slams the stick on the ice before he handles the puck just to make sure it's going to stay intact. But I think his puck movement is maturing fairly nicely, frankly.
Short leash for Stuart Skinner. So last series, it took 3 games, 2 and 2/3 games for Stuart Skinner to get pulled. If he has a weak game, he's out. And they're going to go to Pickard right away. I have no doubt about it, which is a good move. I mean, Calvin Pickard played great. And I was against Stuart Skinner going back in, and I was incorrect. He played. Now, there's some people who say you could have had Pickard in there the final 2 games. Vancouver got very few good slot shots, and even fewer really good inner slot shots. So Skinner kind of was asked to do the minimum, and he did it. But he did it. Nonetheless,
3 goals against in game 6 and 7.
Yeah, I think Ferraro was saying, or someone was saying, the goals that did go on Skinner weren't great. He didn't look set on Garland's goal, according to Ferraro, and one was an outside shot. But that was a pretty fast-moving play with Garland. And I was thinking the same. Did he come out fast enough? Was he truly ready for it?
Was he ready for McLeod to just suddenly cough the puck up in the slot? Probably not.
And watching Bobrovsky and Shesterkin tonight, I mean, he's not that athletic marvel. Those guys are gymnasts in the net. That's not Stuart Skinner, but it's not Ottinger either. And I can tell you from listening to the Dallas podcast, they talked a lot about weak goals that Ottinger had let in. And against Winnipeg, he had a number of weak games. So I agree that he's coming into the series. They have the more experienced coach and the more experienced goalie, so probably the better, what people would define as the better, and that's why they're so heavily favored. And I remember last year against Vegas, Chris Gawlik, who is a Vegas commentator, not well known but extremely smart, and he said on his podcast he's picking Vegas for one reason: better coach, better goalie. And I was thinking, Stuart Skinner's okay, and he's going to be as good as these Vegas goalies. And Jay Woodcroft, he's a smart guy, he's made all the right moves, and that's not true. But by the end of the series, it was proven to be true, and Gawlik was right. So I'm looking for that. Who does have the best coach, and who does have the best goalie? Because I think these are huge factors in the playoffs. And I'm a little worried. Even though Knobloch has made all the right moves, he's still new to this, where DeBoer is tested and successful over time. So, yeah, we'll see. Bruce?
Yeah, my last thing was going to be a comparison of the coaches, David.
Go ahead. Well, I just had one line. I'm sure you'll have fit several paragraphs.
Yeah, well, probably. There, it is a very stark contrast in terms of experience. Is sort of the main point. Pete DeBoer has been in the NHL continuously since 2008-09. I'm pretty sure he's coached all 16 seasons with 5 different teams, including some pretty good clubs: San Jose Sharks. Well, let's do it in order: Florida Panthers, New Jersey Devils that went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2012, the San Jose Sharks went to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2016. So he's coached an Eastern and Western Conference champion. He went to Vegas for 3 years or 2.5 years. Didn't they fire Gerard Gallant so they could hire Pete DeBoer? I think that was the way it went with the cutthroat Vegas Pirates. And then the last 2 years in Dallas, and just 47 and 52 wins in his 2 years in Dallas. And he's just got this huge resume of almost 1,200 NHL games, and another 155 in the playoffs. And you compare that to our man Chris Knobloch, one part of one season, 69 games in the regular season, 12 more in the playoffs, and very good record. Like, he's got a better winning percentage than DeBoer by some distance. But when it comes down to experience in the playoffs, I mean, we saw it last year. I think Woodcroft, as you mentioned, decisively got outcoached by Bruce Cassidy.
He did.
That said, the year before, Woodcroft got the better of Daryl Sutter, who's one of the most experienced men out there in the coaching ranks. So, there's no saying that the new techniques won't get the job done. I'm just saying it's a very interesting contrast to see how our new youngish 45-year-old coach stacks up against the 55-year-old uber experienced Pete DeBoer behind the Dallas bench, and it's an important matchup.
Kurt, who do you think? Did you think Knobloch outcoached Tocchet, or how did he do against Tocchet? How would you say?
Kind of like Grant Fuhr was the best goaltender when the chips are down and it really mattered. I thought Chris Knobloch was the better coach in that series when it really mattered. And I can think of 3 instances that make me feel that way. One was the pulling of Stuart Skinner for Calvin Pickard. Really, that took balls to put your organizational number 3 goalie at the start of the season in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, wow. So that was 1. 2, sitting down Corey Perry, which I wasn't at all sure they would do. But the fact that they did, that took balls.
It did.
And the third thing that they did was, with the game in question and the foundation looking a little shaky in Game 7, I thought a critical moment in that victory was Chris Knobloch calling the timeout and saying, "Easy there, fellas," and calming the waters. And after the timeout, Edmonton didn't allow another shot the rest of the game. So what I think is that Pete DeBoer is a fantastic coach and certainly has more experience than his counterpart. But I think that Chris Knobloch is wise beyond his resume. I keep seeing example after example of it. And like Bruce, I'll be fascinated to watch and see how this matchup plays out against Dallas in this series.
He also split up Nurse and Cece when they were cratering to create 2 new defensive pairings after Game 3.
Yep.
He also
away in Game 7.
He did, but he also created 2 decent checking lines that he could have out there in Game 6 and 7. The Oilers, they had a good checking line. Woodcroft had one against Vegas, but he didn't use it against the Eichel line, the McLeod line with Ryan and Fogle. He didn't use that line. He tried Draisaitl out in Game 6, and it just completely blew up in the Oilers' face.
And he put Dylan in the top 6.
He put Dylan Hollow in. There's been a very coherent movement of players up the lineup who are succeeding and down the lineup who are failing. I would say that he might have been a little slow on some of these moves. Now that might be his ways. Maybe the patience is a good thing, to be a patient person. I would have liked to see all of the moves that he made 1 or 2 games ahead of when he made them, but maybe that's not how he operates, and maybe there's some wisdom. I could just be dead wrong, and he could be dead right. Like, he could be completely right in that. I know a lot of fans were like me, calling for these moves a little ahead of time that they happen, but eventually he did get them right. And I didn't see in that moment anyone calling for the Fogle Ryan McLeod line. And outside of that one mistake by McLeod, I thought that line was doing a very good job the entire 2 games they were together, and it got Fogle going. And they need to get Warren Fogle going because they need to get some scoring out of the bottom 6. So,
Yes, they do.
So I'm not. I think on that setup, I'm not sure. I don't know if anyone outcoached anyone in that series. I thought Tocchet did a masterful job as well.
He
shook
good.
up
I'm
his lineup,
impressed by him.
and I think both Edmonton and Dallas owe Fortuna a sacrifice, because let's face it, the Avs lost Valery Nikushkin before an absolutely critical game, their best winger, and that totally disrupted the Avs.
Second best.
Their second best winger after Rantanen, the top scoring winger the top scoring forward, I think, in the NHL in the playoffs at that time.
He was piling them in for sure.
And the loss of Besser before Game 7 was devastating to the Vancouver Canucks, and I think it proved to be devastating, because when you got home ice advantage, the way you take advantage of that is you load up your top line against whoever you want, and that top line was not nearly as functional with Elias Pettersson taking Besser's spot. Besser was playing outstanding 2-way hockey. So I think the Oilers really benefited it from Besser being out, just as Dallas did with Nikushin. That's playoff hockey, of course. That's how it rolls. Like, injury and illness and personal problems are all part of the story.
Since we're on coaching, and this isn't about the Oilers or Dallas, but does anybody find it curious that the guy who turned in one of the worst Stanley Cup playoff coaching jobs in the last 5 years got a new contract?
Keith?
Jim Hiller.
Hiller.
Jim Hiller's a great guy, but he got massively outcoached in that series. Like, it wasn't even close. And that got him a new contract?
Well, we're on the same page, Kurt. I was just saying earlier on there, like, the LA's power play penalty kill strategy was utter madness, and their even strength strategy.
And everybody could see it.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I have serious questions about Rob Blake's recent work in Los Angeles, and I was kind of surprised that he hung on through this. I thought he might be join the Rolling Heads choir in the playoffs. after getting knocked out by Edmonton a third time.
I like smart defensive hockey, zone hockey in your D zone. But you've got to beat the Edmonton Oilers, you've got to forecheck their defensemen. The Oilers, one of their weaknesses, they've got some defensemen who struggle under pressure to move the puck. If you don't try to take advantage of that, you are not doing your job as a coach. LA had all kinds of forwards suited to the forecheck. They got Deneau, they have Arvidsson, they have these guys, Trevor Moore. They've got all of these guys who can get in there, and Kempe, Kopitar, forecheck, and they hung back. It was a terrible, miserable, losing strategy, and I'm so glad he employed it. And I'm so glad he got a contract. Okay, the ninth thing is the Oilers' swing players, and we'll just go through some of the players who I think have been up and down in the playoffs. There's Darnell Nurse. Against LA, I thought he really struggled, and in the first couple games against Vancouver, I thought he really struggled. So essentially, when he was with CC, he really struggled. And not only that, anytime they made a mistake, it seemed to end up in the back of the net because Stuart Skinner wouldn't make a save. And so it's not just on them; it was also on the goalie. But Darnell Nurse, he really did trend up, I thought, as this series went along. And I wouldn't say that he played excellent hockey, but he played damn good hockey, especially on the PK.
Oh, and that penalty kill in the first period of Game 7 was divine, and he was a big part of that.
And I'm noticing him not starfishing as much. He's not going to, in the last 3 or 4 games, 5 games, maybe even longer than that. I don't think he's dropping to the ice nearly as much as he has been because other teams were eating him alive when he was going down to the ice like that. The other player, swing player, Nugent Hopkins, getting little done against LA at even strength. And in the first games against Vancouver, what was he doing? As good as he was on the special teams, he just was not succeeding even strength. He got bumped up to the top line, and his last 2 games were exceptionally strong at even strength as well. So another swing player, Fogle and McLeod, swing players on the same line. Who are we going to get? Are we going to get the players who in the regular season at even strength regularly put up points? Fogle was like a top line winger in terms of his even strength point scoring in the regular season. McLeod was like a low second, high third line player in terms of even strength points. McLeod's been creating a little bit on the attack. He's made some nice passes that have led to some great shots. Nugent Hopkins hit the post in game 1, for instance, off a McLeod pass. But they need to score. And
one's got to go in here.
Ferraro made the point, if that line doesn't score, the Oilers aren't winning. And that was like what Kurt just said about the Oilers goaltending was the voice of doom, perhaps, but also the voice of truth. If Skinner isn't, at least, if he's not good, the Oilers will not beat the Stars. He's got to be at least good. And what Ferraro said about that line is also true. That line has got to get 1 or 2 more goals at even strength over the course of the series than they give up at even strength. So they've got to find a way to score.
Well, Warren Fogle is a 20-goal scorer this year, and he has 1 empty net goal in the postseason.
Yeah.
That ain't going to get it done, right?
Ryan McLeod's been a 12-goal scorer in each of the last 2 years, and he's combined to score 0 goals in the 2 years combined in the playoffs. And somehow those guys got to find some of that latent offense. Like, even if it's not the thing they're best at, it's one of the things that they do that they haven't been doing.
Isn't it interesting how Derek Ryan made them both better in the last 2 games?
Yeah. Yeah, well, he did, and they'd had Corey Perry before that, and it just wasn't clicking. And Kurt, I heard you, I was smiling when you were talking about the balls it took to, because David and I had talked about that in the prior podcast, the coach sitting down and can you imagine calling Corey effing Perry into your office and saying, okay, Corey, we know that you're number 1 in the league in playoff experience, most games played among active players, and we know you came in here to help us in the biggest of all games, but sorry, buddy, we're sitting you out for this elimination game and the next one. That took, there's coaches, I think there's probably coaches that would have just said, no, he's one of our core players. I'm not going to go there.
Yep.
And he did go there, and I think the team benefited from that move. It took a while, but I think it was the right play, but it took some kind of courage because Corey Perry is a pretty indomitable person.
Yep. And I think we'll still see Corey Perry in this series,
I expect so too. Yeah.
What a tough call that must be.
Brutal. Like, yeah, I mean, he must have, on personal side, he must have felt, that was a real tough choice to have to make.
I think it was an easy call because Perry was sinking the team, and you got to make it. If you're a responsible, professional leader for the good of the group, you got to make that call. So it makes it really easy on the decision level. It's just hard on the personal level to tell somebody. But Corey Perry is also a very professional person who should be putting the good of the group ahead of everyone else as well. So I would expect he would have done that in that moment. I would be shocked if he did not and didn't accept it, like the Hall of Fame hockey player that he is. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think he did get significantly hurt on that end boards collision in the LA series. That was one time he didn't just kind of look, a little the worse for wear when he got up like he usually does. He looked like he was damaged after that collision where he got the penalty even on the play, as I recall, but he definitely got the worst of it. And I'm just not sure he's been quite at his best since then.
Final thoughts? Anything that we haven't chewed over here?
I've been dying to tell you this. Typically, before every Oilers game, I eat craft dinner. I know it's bad for you, blah blah blah, but it's my happy meal before every hockey game.
Comfort food, eh?
Yes. After Game 5, I decided a change needed to be made.
Okay.
My wife was shocked when I did not eat craft dinner prior to Game 6. And
instead,
I had fish. And
fish sticks or fish.
And after the win in Game 6, I'll be damned if I'm taking a chance.
Uh-huh.
So the craft
More
dinner
fish.
stayed in the cupboard again, and I had chili before Game 7.
Okay.
Second
one for the team, Kurt.
Before an Oilers game again.
Man, you scratch an Oiler fan and they got some crazy ass superstition that they're clinging to right now. Like seriously, my friend was telling me about his shirts that he was wearing, something about his shirts, like
Turtle Island shirts. 5-0.
Yeah. There you go. As a kid, I used to not be able to bear it, and I had to turn the TV off when my Montreal Canadiens were challenging for the Stanley Cup in the 70s. I couldn't take it. So I would turn the TV off and wait a minute or two. And now we're doing the game grades. So my only superstition is I can't take the suspense because I'm watching the game 5 minutes after it's happened. So I will go look at the real-time summary to see what the score is now and then, so I know if I'm going to suffer or not. But other than that, I really don't have. That's not really a superstition. It's just sometimes I want to know. Sometimes, like for the first 50 minutes, I usually don't want to know what's happening ahead of time. But towards the end, I can't take it, and I got to know. So I'm constantly peeking at it to see what's happened. And I was in the last game, and I realized the Oilers had won. Even though I had like 6 minutes left to go and watching the game, and it made it it's funny because it takes some of the energy out of watching it because I'm not on the edge of my chair at that point. So I'm just watching it, and I know what's going to turn out, but it's so much more painful when you don't.
You must have been a tough guy to read bedtime stories to, David. Like, go to the last page, Dad.
No, I wasn't. That's my wife. My wife Lily. She, like, when we're watching a movie, she's got to read the synopsis on whatever it is, Wikipedia of the movie before I love the suspense, generally speaking, but sometimes not. I can't take it.
Well, if you couldn't take it when you were rooting for the Habs, how do you suppose people rooting against them were doing? Always getting beat.
They sure were. That was it. I went from a Habs fan to an Oilers fan. I had some pretty good years as a hockey fan. Not so great since then. Not so great, but this has been really good. And I'm serious when I congratulate the Oilers on this achievement. And I think it's understated, actually, what it means to win the division and to win, like if you were to win the conference even. Like winning the conference, like through the 70s, there was only like 16, 17 teams in the NHL. Like it's like winning the Stanley Cup through the 70s. It's an amazing accomplishment these teams, all four of these teams have achieved already. And I do think it should be, people in these fan bases should be really happy. Whatever comes next, it's gravy. It could be, and it could just be fantastic, right? Like it could be out of this world good, but I'm really happy with the result.
Yeah, well, the Oilers are not only they're not going to get officially recognized as Pacific Division champions. Unfortunately, that's now the regular season because of the damn wild card thing, right?
Fair enough.
They don't play strictly divisional playoffs, but they play 2 rounds of playoffs and they topple the division champion regular season team to come out of the Pacific, essentially. But they're the champions of Canada, right? The only Canadian team left standing. And I looked it up, somebody asked me about the Oilers' record in the playoffs against Canadian clubs, and they've played 17 series against other Canadian teams, and they're 15-2 in the history of the Oilers against Canadian teams in the playoffs. They lost to Calgary in 1986 and to Winnipeg in 2021. And otherwise, they're like 6-1 against the Jets, 5-1 against the Flames, 3-0 against the Canucks, 1-0 against the Habs, And the other Eastern teams, of course, they haven't met up with them because that would have to be a Stanley Cup final.
What popped into my head when you said that, Bruce, was the 1990 series against Winnipeg, which they almost lost. And I have to say, I keep waiting for Stuart Skinner to have his Bill Ranford moment, where he transformed from the bumbling goalie who's letting in weak goals to the Conn Smythe winner, as Bill Ranford did in that playoff series. It happened against the Winnipeg Jets, where he transformed his game and suddenly caught fire and was fantastic and was probably the best goalie in the world for a year or two there. So, Stu, it could still happen. It could. Stranger things have happened, right? Stu Skinner has had great runs of games where he's looked good, where he's looked solid, where everyone's thinking, yeah, we could trust this guy in the playoffs. He's really good. Like on the first shot, he's right there. He's just solid, blocking everything, and the Oilers take care of the rebounds. That's their game, and that's Stu Skinner's game. So that's what I want to see.
Well, the Oilers did a great job of shot prevention against Vancouver. Just 32 shots in the last 2 games. My concern against the Stars specifically is their ability to prevent the rush, which Dallas crushed them on in the last game, the 5-0 game. That's probably the one that has the Dallas pundits all saying, well, we got this. Because in that game, it seemed like every time every chance failed, there was like 2 Dallas guys speeding the other way and through the neutral zone, like as soon as the puck changed hands. And because they have those skilled young players, the quick counterattack is very much part of their game, and it's something the Oilers are going to have to deal with.
If they put defense first, they will win this series. If the Oilers put defense first, if the first thing they're in last, like when they get on the ice, defense, if they're all thinking that, the offense takes care of itself for the Edmonton Oilers. Every single one of these players has got to be thinking, they're not getting an odd man rush. I'm not going to be the guy that causes the odd man rush. And I'm not going to be the guy who causes the open shot in the defensive slot. And if they all think that, from Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl on down, and those 2 are key players in this thinking process, if they all do that, they will beat the Dallas Stars. They can do this, but it's going to take that kind of defensive discipline. And they've shown it, I would suggest, in about 2/3 of the playoff games that they've played. And they perfected it in the last 2 games. It's the best they've done. So they do that, they can beat Dallas. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, though.
Oilers in 7.
Why they play the games.
Good stuff, Kurt. My heart says Oilers in 7, although I admit it, if I had to bet money, if I had to bet cash, I would bet Stars in 7. But I don't bet cash, so I'm just, I'll go with Oilers in 7. Kurt or Bruce, you don't like making predictions, so we won't even force you. We won't force you to this time.
I'm an astronomer, not an astrologer. It's my stance, and I'm sticking to it. No horoscopes.
Yeah, we won't make you go against your religion. All right.
I can predict eclipses, but they don't involve 16 humans if you count the stripes, and a randomly bouncing puck that's both round and flat at the same time. There's a lot going on out there, and it's pretty difficult to predict what's going to happen in the next 0.5 of a second, let alone the next 7 games.
A lot of physics at play there.
Gentlemen, thanks for talking tonight.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thank you.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.